Welcome to Inside Auto Podcast, where we feature everyone and anyone you'd want to talk to in and out of the automotive industry.
Ilana Shabtai here with Aaron Horowitz, co-hosts of Inside Auto Podcast, where we interview top dealers, GMs, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, marketers in and out of the automotive industry. Before we introduce today's guest, this episode is sponsored by AutoLeadstar.com. The AutoLeadstar platform is built on a technology so powerful it allows you to market, sell, and service cars as you would in the real world at scale and online, making one-to-one matches between shoppers and inventory. AutoLeadstar is the only platform that is powered by scale, speed, and specificity to change the way dealers do marketing today. Aaron, it's so great to be back with you today. How are you?
Been a while, hasn't it, Ilana?
It feels like it has been, yeah.
Yeah, at least a week.
At least a week. Yeah.
So I am just so excited for our guest today for so many reasons. Someone that we appreciate and enjoy talking to here at AutoLeadstar. We're very excited to have Kyle Mountsier here with us today. Hey, Kyle, how are you?
Hey, doing great, and really excited to hang out with you guys because I love the conversations always.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're excited to have you on. We love when we have people who've been in kind of every corner of auto, and to kind of give your bio here, it really describes that. And you've spent, over a decade in pretty much every aspect of the dealership space: fixed ops, variable ops, marketing, process, training. Right now you're leading marketing and biz dev at the amazing Nelson Auto Group. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey through all of the different spaces, and now I get to have my hands in kind of all of them. So it's really fun.
That is true. And on the side, you are the host of the Contagious Podcast, which everyone should check out on Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And you're also husband, father of two wonderful kids. You're a pastor at the Resonant Church, founder of the Roadies, which we want to hear about down in Nashville. And an interesting just bio for us to talk about. There's a lot to get into, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We could take this podcast in so many directions, Ilana, right?
So many. Yeah. I'm so excited that you're here with us today, Kyle.
We also discovered in the pre-convo that Ilana visited one of your stores in 2017. And you were chatting, you guys were we knew each other before we knew each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was funny because we looked it up and I looked, and it was a little Google Hangouts between me and another employee, and we were shooting back and forth, and he said, check out our new marketing company. And we didn't ever communicate with AutoLeadstar until 5 years later, but it's okay. We're here.
Ilana, that was a breakdown in our process, wasn't it?
It was a breakdown, yeah. It's all about the follow-up. I always say it's all about the follow-up.
Is that logical, or is that just like your personality, or is that just the fact that why would I ever delete anything in this day and age where storage is what it is? What's kind of the non-delete thing? Does that say something about you or not at all?
Yeah, maybe it does. I've not thought that many. Well, so one is, storage is, we're on G Suite. And so it's really easy to not delete anything. All of my stuff is on iCloud on my computer. So I just pay for more storage because I'm weird like that. But also it lets me go back and continue networking and remind myself of sometimes I'll just go search a process or something that I was doing prior, and I'll go pull up this old Word document where I had no clue how to format anything, but had one nugget, and I pull that forward into something new. It really is about having that archive of knowledge that either someone else has poured into me or that I've poured in. And then there's a third piece, which is probably the terrible side of me, which is always have receipts kind of thing, which is terrible, but also it's good because sometimes you just need to be able to go back and show what someone said or what you said so that everyone can be on the same page. And so that's right.
Yeah. And do you feel on this, I'm fascinated by this stuff. So you see it, part of it is like an external mind, an off-grid archive, so to speak, for yourself. Do you use a system for that? Do you use Evernote? Do you use anything for yourself where you kind of keep that stuff, or it's all in your email inbox?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'm kind of a systems guy. So a lot is just in my inbox. I do use folders pretty frequently in my inbox for certain subject matters so that I can peruse those. I am very diligent about cleaning up my documents, desktop, Dropbox, Google Drive into manageable folders that are recognizable. I try, and a lot of times I will, before writing a subject line to an email, I'll think about my future self and how I would search that email. The email subject is not just for the person that's receiving it, but it's for my future self and how I can get back to it. Really,
this is fantastic. I love this. And Ilana, this is a discussion we have all the time, right?
Yes, it is. Well, there's two things here, right? Because I don't delete anything. Also on my iPhone, I transfer from phone to phone, literally everything. If Aaron and I are talking about like the time we were stuck in Medford and we had to like drive a Mustang to Portland at 3 a.m., which happened, which is a great story for another podcast, but I'll be like, oh yeah. And
the major lesson being that even though it has a button where you can open the roof, if you're driving 80 on the highway, you should not be doing that while you're driving.
Oh no.
Yeah, we didn't know that. Well, we tried to also close the roof like while we were driving 80.
Not a good idea.
We don't know anything about auto in 2016 or whatever that was. But anyway, we'll talk about it and I'll just be able to pull up a picture from it like that. I appreciate that and I need that in my life.
Yeah, but Ilana also, like, part of it has to do with like your memory. Like Ilana names documents in a way that is impossible to ever discover because she has a very good memory. Whereas like I need my documents to pre-think every possible search term I would use because there's no way I'm going to find it otherwise. It's just lost and gone.
Yeah. So yes. I'm getting that.
Yeah. I also think like, when I sometimes think about this time in like the world, I mean, first of all, there's all that discussion over like, to what extent are we, are all these bits and bytes actually going to ever be preserved for like future generations, down the line, right? There's that whole discussion over the kind of ephemeral era, which is what we're living in because of just the fact that all the information is digital. But you do think a lot about like a lot of the like little all the transformations that we went through and kind of this transformation into a digital universe. They're all just preserved in these email exchanges and these conversations and these like, LinkedIn posts from a million years ago. And there is something like historical about it, I feel. And sometimes when I'm like, interacting in a certain way, I'm like, oh, wow, that's like a really interesting artifact of this time because, we're talking about like how major processes in the world are transforming. And like, here's now the nuts and bolts of how that's going to happen in this particular process. And it probably will never go back. And I kind of think sometimes see those backs and forth in that context as well.
Yeah. I mean, even like if we talk automotive, like 10 years ago, is like every 4 to 5 years, there was a kind of major shift. And then it was like every 2 to 3 years we were shifting and then every year. And now I feel like, I mean, this last year has the proof concept for it. It's like every single month, the change management that we have to go through because of the digitization of the world is insane. And I like how you said like the archive nature of what we have digitally. And I think some software providers like Apple has done a good job and even Android is starting to come alongside that and like in pulling in the memory type thing and archiving data using AI and allowing you to see that as a stream of conscious and tag certain things. But this is interesting. So my mom, when we had kids, so we had our first kid, she goes, are you going to do a first year photo book? And we were like, oh yeah. And we got like 4 months in and quit, which is my poor daughter. But on our second, we realized so by the time my daughter's like 2 or 3, my phone, I told it like 3 or 4 photos to attach to her face. And here's what's crazy. It now memorizes her face all the way through it. So like every change of her, it captures. And so I literally have like I could fill 15 photo albums with my daughter's face because of the technology. So where my mom might think, oh, that's unfortunate because you don't have these physical photo albums. Like we go back on my daughter's birthday, which was just a little while ago, and we get to go and just roll through these photos and videos and it's all right there. So the digitization for me, as long as it's managed well and put in its rightful place, really gives us a structure as a culture, again, managed well and put in its rightful place to have some real added value to what we can remember.
Beautifully said. I think that's a really beautiful idea. And I think that they're also just very different experiences, the physical and the digital. So that experience of a photo album when you were a kid, maybe like taking that dusty photo album off the shelf and seeing your parents when they were younger. I'm not like, I don't know, maybe like I guess I could envision my kids one day looking back and sort of stumbling on something, but it might not, I don't know. I feel like there's value to both in a different way, though I haven't really teased it out. One thing I've noticed is like so I'm like the Jewish Sabbath observant, where we don't use electronics on the Sabbath, on Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, right? So we I used to remember at home, it was all books. And when I was a kid, there was anyways like a computer, right? There wasn't like a phone that you could go scroll through and look at stuff, or Facebook you had to be on or whatever. But like my kids don't use any electronics on Saturday. And like, I sometimes want to show them like photo albums, and we have like 2. So we keep looking at the same ones over and over again. I'm like, oh man, I need to print some more photo books, which I'm just going to go into an app, one of the many apps I can use, and just like, auto generate a bunch of photo albums. Cause it's kind of nice to have that offline time when you can like experience those pictures and stuff. I don't know. Who knows? These are all really interesting questions. Cause the other thing that blew my mind was I was watching this video. I think it was from 2007 on YouTube. It was Bill Gates and Steve Jobs on stage together, being interviewed by what's that guy's name? Walt Mossberg of the Wall Street Journal, and maybe Kara Swisher. I think it was Kara Swisher with him. But the quality of the video when I was watching it, I'm like, oh man, this is like from the 70s. I mean, this is terrible. Like, or it was like 80s video quality. No, it's 2007. I mean, the quality of like media has gone so far in the past 10, 15 years. Unbelievable how, what we can do on our phones now compared to what people would do with hard, heavy equipment back in, in the first, in the aughts and in the early part of the second decade of the 2000s. It's just mind blowing how far the tech has come. It's really insane. Those videos of our kids now are just unbelievable. They're like movie quality, so, okay. So
absolutely.
Kyle, like before we get into cars, so you're a pastor. Tell us about that. Like, tell us how you became a pastor, what that means, what you do. Most people probably know what a pastor is, but like pretend like we don't, and give us the background.
Yeah. So the really great thing is, I as with most people, I did not go to college to be in the car business. I was a church music major. And so wanted to be a worship pastor and help plant it. And so plant means start a church in downtown Cincinnati. My wife and I moved to Florida, and I wasn't directly involved in the church, although I was helping, play music, lead worship, things like that. But then when we moved to Nashville, we have a real heart for, because look at the volume of churches in the U.S., it's severely, and in most of the world, per population, it's severely outnumbered. And so growing the church through planting in unique areas with unique people and unique purposes is a really important piece to us. So we connected with a gentleman named Shane that was starting this church in the city we now live in, and it's Resonate Church. And so I was installed as an elder a couple of years later. Elder, pastor, meaning the same thing in our church family. And so we say it like this: we say we're a family of missionary servants that's practicing the way of Jesus for the renewal of ourselves, our city, and our world. And so that's what the leadership in pastoral and shepherding is connecting to people and growing in Christ likeness. And then, so it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of phone calls. It's people in our houses. It's preparing for gatherings together on Sundays, which is when our church meets. And it's an up and down thing. I tell you what, it's if you don't know any pastors, you need to, just because a lot of people see the smiling or the shiny pastor with the fancy suit, and for the majority of pastors in the world, it's much more in the trenches. It's dealing with pain and hurt and suffering and sorrow, which is all around us. And so I like to say as a pastor, I get to be with people, and that's my heart, is to be with people and to learn and hear and listen and be present emotionally and physically with people, and point them toward Christ. So that's me as the pastor, and I get to do that in the margins of not having a full-time gig as well. So, yeah.
But it's not a Sunday thing, right? It's an all week thing, right? People are calling you when they need you, and you're weaving that in with your, so to speak, day job, right? Which is clearly a major part of your life. Meaning that's got to be in some ways complicated. Maybe in other ways it helps you be a pastor more effectively to have sort of, those dual roles. But how do you handle that?
Yeah, it does make it tough. I will say that. Having to dedicate time and energy and not being able to be, present with people at all times. But it also gives me a greater perception for like what everybody's in and involved in on a daily basis. And what I love is like, I'm not just, the pastor that's like, oh, there's the pastor and he does all this stuff. Like my wife is an instrumental part in what we are as a church family. And so she gets to be in our community daily, shopping and going on play dates and being involved with people in our community. And so it's about like all of life. And we have a lot of people, our dinner table's open. And there's sometimes when we close it down, we need that family, but our dinner table's open because that table and that communication and that conversation and that being a family and really not just being a family, but so many people's version of family is so distorted and so it's so painful that reframing the family in the way that God sees family is a lot of the work that we get to do, and the passion that we have is allowing people to step into a new family in a way that's supportive and loving and messy and honest about our messiness and all of the above. So.
Yeah, I think that's such an important counterbalance in just the notion of community, of family, of friends, of loyalty, of understanding complexity, of being able to sit with people who you entirely disagree with and still understand that they're humans and sort of need the same basic things that others need. There's something in the that I see sort of happening in digital today. You look at the online world, right? The Twitter sphere and whatnot, and it's so reductionist and everyone is so it gets so vicious. And I just think like, unless we really can figure out how to counterbalance that in our day-to-day lives and sort of remind ourselves what it means to like, live with other humans and appreciate them as people, we're in a lot of trouble. The more we go, the more we go VR and the more we go remote and the more we go, it's going to be very, very, it's going to really kind of minimize our humanity. And that's I think that's one of the biggest threats to sort of the digital world along with everything else. But that's a very big challenge.
Yeah. So I have a new Clubhouse / LinkedIn friend. His name's Joshua Lee. And I absolutely love what he says because, okay, I'll set it up. So like we go to the bar or the restaurant or we're in someone's house and it's like, oh, we're humans sitting across from the table and we have conversations and we get to know each other and we share life and we do that really well. And then we get in the business world and we have these terms like B2B and B2C and e-commerce and customers and things like that. And Joshua Lee says, can we reterm all this thing to H to H? So human to human. It's like every part of life is human to human, whether you're in business or in sales or accounting or at the bar or at a family's table, you're interacting with other humans. So just be human with them.
Yeah.
Stop trying to like perpetrate and be something else,
Yeah, no, it's like ultimate common denominator and nice. Okay. That was great. I actually learned a lot there. So thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I did too.
Appreciate the learning more about what you do and sort of how you position yourself as a pastor. In terms of Nelson Automotive and maybe just in general auto, tell us a little bit about, and we like to kind of hear this from all of our guests because we've there's no template for how you get in the auto industry. As you mentioned in university, you weren't like, I'm going into the car biz tomorrow, but maybe some people are. I mean, last night I was talking to like an awesome, we have a really great customer group whose principal's Ali Ahmed. And he was sort of, telling me about his journey from like MIT economics engineering into the auto group. It's just interesting to hear everyone's story. But I would love to, so we'd love to hear your story. Like, how did you get to the auto business? What brought you here? What kept you here? And then Nelson in particular, how did you get there?
Yeah. So like the real origin story is, of course, I was trying to find a job in church and music. My wife, then fiance, was moving to Pensacola, Florida, which she was a professional ballerina. If you can imagine that, there's not many in the world. And so you have to kind of go where the job takes you. Right. And so I was looking down there and we needed separate places and couldn't find anything. So I was thinking restaurants. I'd served for a while and I was like, I don't really want to do that. So I see the sales job and someone like early back in middle school had said, oh, you would be a great salesperson one day. I was like, well, that's crazy. So I applied and it was one of those, I fogged a mirror and got a job. It was great. And it was definitely a job for the first 5 months. I applied a bunch of places and tried to get out. And then a wonderful friend of mine, Pete Harrington, got me the job at Sandy Sansing Nissan, and a guy named Aaron Hill, who is now running some stores in Central Florida, took me under his wing. He was a GSM at the time and really showed me what it looked like to be in car sales and to do it the right way and do it the honest and upfront way and to do every process and check every box and ensure you were doing the business the right way. And I went from like a 9-car salesperson to like a 20-car salesperson within a month. It was crazy. One day I'll tell you the story of like how I won a TV that month, and it was really crazy. So that like that trajectory then took me. I was there for a little over a year and a half, and then my wife and I wanted to move to Nashville. I transferred to a Nissan store here, kind of shopped at the stores, and was there for another year and a half. Moved. That was where I moved through management pretty quickly. Was running the new car side of the store there as a new car director, and then I got a call. I got a call late on a Saturday night from my current boss. He had gotten my name from someone else and I hadn't applied for anything. And it was kind of one of those perfect timing things, really, honestly. I was again in this mode of potentially trying to kind of get out of the car business, was looking at banking and called me. And we spent, I think, 7 hours together the next Tuesday. So it was really right. And so I've been with the Nelson Auto Group for 8 years this month, coming up in just a few days. So
congrats on the anniversary.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And then through this group, finance director, sales manager, opening a store, and a lot of things from business development, from operations, software systems, and have really been given the freedom to explore and learn and grow and learn with others and serve and lead others. So it's been a really big blessing to be a part of this group and now getting to kind of have a platform because of my experience for like, I've got this really crazy dream. Got this crazy dream that one day there's going to be college students graduating going, does anybody know of any open jobs in the auto industry? Because I just can't find them because we're so packed with the absolute best people in the world. And so that's my dream for my son. He's 5. And so I've got 15 years to make that happen. I think we can go quicker. I think we can make that adjustment. And so that's the reason for the podcast. That's the reason for my passion behind, the automotive industry. And I really think it's a place where we can make it, where people want to be a part of the industry and do business with us, that it's a desirable thing to do. So, yeah.
I agree with that. Are there specific holes in the industry or anything right now that you feel like we need to kind of get over those challenges to get to that? I know, you've been bringing people together on platforms like Clubhouse and your podcast, and we talked about this briefly before we started. And I've been in some of the rooms that you've moderated and it really is amazing. I mean, you did a room about diversity and inclusion in the industry. And I think that's a big place for change in automotive. So I'd love to hear, where are like some of the areas that you think automotive can really transform so that people will want to come and will become that industry that every single college student will say, hey, I'm going into automotive.
Yeah, I think, so for me, it's the kind of three words, people, process, and technology. So when it comes to people, that means the type of cultures that we're creating, the type of leadership pipelines that we're giving, the type of leadership training that we're giving, not just how to do a car deal or how to write an RO, but how to lead and servant lead other people. So creating a culture around people, not around process, which is a different mindset that you have to, instead of creating a culture around your process, you try to create a culture around your people. So that's one. The next is process. So we've got to overhaul how we do business, and what it takes is us asking the people that we want to do business with us, how they want to do business. So we've got to create processes and structures that allow them to do business with us more often and easier. So whether that be in variable or fixed ops, we've got to create those processes. And then once we have those kind of figured out, we figure out how the culture fits and how the process is managed within that culture. Then we have to bring along technology, and for the longest time, and really, I'll say in the last 3 years, we've done a lot better with technology, but there's still a lot of gaps. And I know you all know that, the majority of our technology is based on FTP file sends, in the automotive industry. And we've got to move forward. We've got to talk about single page application websites. We've got to talk about API integrations. We've got to talk about open platforms. A buddy of mine likened it like this. So someone graduates college. When they went into college, they were required to get a Mac to do all of their coursework. They were on Blackboard. They played around in the stock market. They created new apps and a plethora of other things to be in whatever industry that they're in. And then they couldn't find a job anywhere. And they said, okay, fine, I'll try the sales thing and I'll get in the automotive sales. And then their very first day, they're given a set of logins, and they're given the login to their DR tool, which is really fancy and gorgeous and beautiful. And then they get a login to Reynolds. Like green screen, Shift F5, Shift J, Command S, right? And they go, so wait, what? And we sell $30,000, $60,000, $100,000 machines using this. So we've got to innovate there and get everybody on board from a technology standpoint to attract that type of employee. So that's people, process, technology.
Yeah, it's really well said. I think that there's I always like, now that we're for the first time getting exposure to OEM programs, we talk about internally here in the office. We say like, wow, like with all these restrictions and the audits we have to go through, and the, and every other vendor, if the only requirement was that there was a proper, functioning REST API that others could interact with, that would make the OEM programs infinitely more valuable than all the layers of, stuff that has built up there for the year. And again, I always try to understand why people do things and not just come and be all critical. It's like, doesn't help anyone. It's entirely obvious to me now why the OEMs have standards, why they want to actually know what's happening in the best way that they can, because there's a lot of challenges with sort of the way things have been done, say in particular in say the advertising world and whatnot. But in the end of the day, like if there was just a requirement to have a good API, and if you want to be a CRM that's approved by the OEM, if you want to be a website approved by the OEM, if you want to be a vendor, your data has to be accessible and within whatever framework, leverageable. And that would just make so many problems go away over the next 5 years, because innovators and entrepreneurs would be able to do things that, or frankly, big companies would just be able to do things that today is just extraordinarily difficult to do.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the way that technology has been gated is because the data has been monetized in a poor way, and I think if we restructured and instead of monetizing the data, we monetize the results greater, we would be in a lot better place as an industry. So it's going to take, it's a lot of fear right now that we won't have the monetization from a data perspective, but unless you are distinctly in advertising on Google or Facebook or anything like that, the majority of the rest of the world isn't monetizing data. They're monetizing the results. And so we've got to shift as an industry to understand that we can monetize results and not data.
Results or a piece of machinery that is useful. Meaning there's a lot of ways to approach it other than, as you pointed out, gating the data. That's really critical to take that big step forward when it comes to the technology.
Well, and here's the crazy thing, right? And you guys are a fairly new startup. The reality is that the startup that has the greatest, so Clubhouse, right? Something like Clubhouse in the world that blows everyone's minds. That's incredible. That's nobody's seen anything like it from a website provider or a digital marketer or anything like that. Now the gate is so high that I can't open the door to the gate. And so now my technology doesn't get to the hands of the places where it can be useful. And so now you've actually stifled the franchise's capacity for growth because you've limited the access to their data and your data from third-party providers. And so I think this is where a lot of the challengers in the industry are beating us because they don't have those gates.
No,
and they have open accessibility to technology build that we don't have yet. And there's some challengers to that. I think you all are. There's some DMS challengers to that. There's some CRM challengers to that. So we're tiptoeing into that. But again, like you said, it's gonna take buy-in from the OEMs, primarily.
I was looking at, I always think about the industry, and if you did if you do a Google search on news from automotive, say over the past 6 months or past 2 years, right? The majority of the news is going to be around, Tesla, and then it's Carvana and the Broom Shift and the digital. That's where all the buzz is, right? And if you look at their market cap, it's astounding. Meaning Carvana has a $50 billion plus market cap, and I just think about. But when you look at car sales, right, you see those folks are selling 2% of cars in the United States. 98% of non-private transactions are still happening in the more traditional automotive retail environment. And so, for automotive to see itself as a sleeping giant that's going to wake up and sort of establish its ability to continue to generate the societal goods that it generates, right? To be that industry that actually employs people who don't necessarily go to Stanford and who pay where you can make a good living and actually employ millions of people directly and indirectly. For that to be successful, it's almost like it's an imperative. It's a mission to reform the tech side before it's too late. And the folks who can again access what you were describing come in and they just continue to eat away at the margin. Like, this is a beautiful thing that exists. And it's very lucky that the regulations that were laid down in the 30s and 40s kind of gave it this moat that are protecting it right now. And it's a huge opportunity. And I think,
but the barge has been broken. The barge has been broken because they've figured out the state context, and so we've got to play by the same rules, and we've got to get to the states and the governments and have the same capacity. I've heard this 2% thing, and a lot of people have been using it for we shouldn't be afraid. It's only 2% of the market, and
2% is huge.
Business that way. It's massive. Think about the weighted nature of that 2%.
Massive.
It's four companies getting 2% of the market. We've got 16,000 franchise OEMs getting
massive.
Well, not 98%, but a large percent of it. You got independents in there too, but we've got to.
Yeah, but of the $1 trillion of car sale. I mean, the fact that the other than Tesla, they're eating away at the used car sales. But you see exactly what that has to be a major warning flag, but there's still an opportunity. And I think that, again, as you pointed out, we need to understand that some of the models that got some of the big tech players in the industry to where they are today, they're only going to ultimately help the industry move into the future. And, I hope that we and others are going to be part of that process, because it really does have, I think, a very important place in kind of making the case that capitalism has some value still when you look at the world and you see the widening gap between, widening wealth gap. And it's just automotive actually still makes the case. And I think that that's an important thing for society as a whole. All right, Kyle, we typically keep these short. That's what we've done. So we could keep talking basically for hours, Ilana, right? I think that would be our preference here. But so Kyle, where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so it's Contagious Podcast. You can go to contagiousPodcast.com or contagiousauto.com and find it. Or just search it wherever your podcasts are. Sometimes you got to throw the word automotive in there because we're fairly young, but you'll find it. And then you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm literally the only Kyle Mountsier in the world. So if you do a Google search, you can find me wherever I need to be found. So that's a pretty interesting fact. And it's hard to spell my name, so Contagious is a lot easier. So go that route.
Good. Well, we learned it's Kyle Mountsier. We can do that. Ilana, this was fantastic. Kyle, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ilana and Aaron, for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I hope that y'all are on the train, and I know you are. So yeah.
100%. All right, Ilana, you want to wrap us?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle. We learned about everything from what it is to be a pastor to what it's like to be 10 plus years in automotive. So we appreciate all the content and your leadership in automotive. So for all of our listeners, I know you enjoyed this episode. Please tune in Inside Auto Podcast. You can also find it wherever you listen to your podcasts, and InsideAutoPodcast.com. Thank you so much.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Inside Auto Podcast. Check out our other episodes with top entrepreneurs and industry leaders.